I really don't remember the last month or so before going to treatment, and I don't really remember treatment other than what I wrote in the journal that they gave us until like the second or third day. It's kind of really scary to have like such a hazy memory of like kind of a significant amount of time. I remember like one of the first things I wrote in my journal in Denver was that I was just surrounded by these other skeletons that I had to like compare myself to, that I didn't need to be there. I was angry that I wasn't sicker. I thought everyone around me was worse off than I was, that I didn't need to be there. I was just so competitive with the other people in treatment. It's really disturbing to think about that. I don't really know who would wish upon themselves passing out from running or having to be in acute care and on a feeding tube, or I don't know, but I was angry at myself for not being worse off, even though the number on the scale was the lowest it had ever been, and I was scared by it. I thought, compared to other people, I was fine. I was started on like a really low meal plan because when you're refeeding, there's side effects that can occur if you refeed too quickly, and my doctors were all very cautious about that. I had been so restrictive with my diet before I went in, and slowly I started like being more cognitively aware and present. The people around me became less competition and more like friends, I guess. And I remember saying that like the skeletons now had faces, that I was seeing people for like who they were instead of their eating disorders, and other people were seeing me for me, not just as my eating disorder. And that was also the first time that I had met another guy that had an eating disorder. He was my age. We were the only two guys for a while, a couple weeks. But with anorexia especially, and eating disorders in general, they're like such stigmatized disorders and so pigeonholed for females that, I mean, it's a big reason why men don't seek out treatment for eating disorders, is because the societal stigmas and different judgments that kind of accompany. And I know for me that was like a big part of why it took me so long to kind of admit to myself that I had an eating disorder. I was inpatient for a month and a half, and my attitude this time was definitely a lot different. I really realized that I had a lot more that I wanted to do in my life, and I didn't want running to be the only thing I had to live for every day. And it was definitely the hardest experience that I've had to go through, because there was no escaping the challenges. Every meal was a challenge, every snack, every therapy session, family sessions, psychiatry sessions, different groups, everything was challenging. I was just more aware of like how much I was giving up to my eating disorder before I went, and how much I was missing out on. My attitude compared to the first time I was in treatment was drastically different. I really sincerely wanted to kind of get to the root of my eating disorder and get to the root of like when it started, how it started, talk about things that I had just kind of like suppressed so deeply inside myself that I didn't think they happened. I didn't think that they affected my eating disorder. And that was a really hard challenge, just to dig up such hard memories, I guess. But it was definitely one of like the most rewarding times. While I was in treatment, I decided that I wasn't going to let my vegetarianism be something that kind of kept me in my disorder. So while I was there, I slowly started trying more meat, especially the meat that I'd sworn off after the first time I was in treatment, because I know that was part of my eating disorder. So I kind of allowed that. I think that at that time, I was also I was willing to let myself struggle while I was in treatment, which the first time I didn't think I could struggle, because I didn't think that's what patients were supposed to do. When I got caught for exercising in my room, I was given a body bug to monitor like my movement and everything like that, and I think I was just more willing to, it was harder for me to let go of my eating disorder the second time. It was kind of manifest in like my actions while I was there. But After the month and a half of inpatient, I moved to their partial hospitalization program. I was there for another month and a half. And I was really angry that while I was there I had to continue to gain weight, because I was hoping that once I left inpatient I would be to my goal weight and then it would just be maintaining, but I still had a lot of ground to make up when I went to PHP. There were more guys there, so I was in an apartment with 3 other guys for a while. But after like 2 weeks, I was the only guy again. So the dynamic was different than in inpatient, being by myself again. But I really enjoyed like even though it was a little freedom, I thought that like being able to like not be in a hospital for 24 hours a day under like constant supervision. We lived in the apartments and took a van to the treatment center every day, but that little bit of freedom that like after 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I can't remember, we were like free to go to Target, which was probably like the most exciting thing. Like the first Target outing that I went to, like not part of a group outing, was, I don't know, it was surprisingly liberating and just very weird. I being secluded from like the real world for so long, that was just kind of weird, but I was really lucky that my parents were able to visit while I was in inpatient and also partial hospitalization. So was my girlfriend and 2 of her friends. So I wasn't completely alone, and I talked to my family almost every day, or probably every day. It was really great to hear from them how they perceived my treatment going, just because talking to my parents, they would notice that I was more optimistic about things, that I had things that I wanted to like look forward to, that I was more aware of like how devastating my disorder was. And while I'm aware that like my case isn't necessarily like the most severe case, I am aware that like for me it was life-threatening, and that if I continued the behaviors I was doing this time last year, I really don't know where I would be. I would have been passed out in a ditch somewhere from running, and I'm not really sure what would have come of that. So I'm very lucky that I had the opportunity to go to treatment while it was definitely hard and challenging. My outlook on everything afterwards is drastically different. I always thought that, well, since I want to go to medical school and be a doctor, I thought that be working really long hours, you'll have to study, it's going to be hard to find breaks for food. I thought I would have such an advantage going into that. I thought that skipping meals would just kind of give me the upper hand. I'd be able to function better. I wouldn't be dealing with hunger or anything like that normal people would be doing. But as my semester last year can be a testament to, my mental functioning would have been completely shot, and I would not have been in a proper place to take care of other people if I wasn't taking care of myself. So I think that it was definitely like the right move to go to treatment, especially if I do want to continue on into the medical field. I mean, I wouldn't have advised anyone who was in my position to keep doing what they were doing. I would have encouraged them to go seek help, and especially greater help if it was something that they couldn't do on their own. Financially, it is really difficult, and I don't think that should be something that keeps other people from seeking out help. This past time I went to treatment in Denver, I wanted to pay for it all on my own. I didn't want my parents to kind of take care of it for me. I really wanted to own my recovery this time. I'm really glad that I did that, because I don't know, it just kind of like put a bigger like weight on that, and like that decision to go. It was my choice, and it was like my doing, and it really kind of like instilled this greater desire to like get the most out of it that I could. There's always things that are like, the treatment center was really willing to help with me since I was financially not exactly well off, since I was a student in college. They worked things out that made it a lot easier to pay for, so that should definitely not be a deterrence to anyone that's wanting to get help, because everyone deserves it, and it's probably possible for everyone, I hope. And since I was in treatment, like going back home, I was really worried about family events, family gatherings, seeing my friends again. I thought everyone was going to judge me for having gained so much weight, because it was the heaviest I had ever been when I was discharged. I was also not I was 21, and going into treatment I was wearing like children's clothing, which I mean wasn't exactly like ideal, obviously. I looked like a kid, and it was just I don't know, kind of demeaning in a way, like having to wear that. But so I felt like my like time in treatment was perceived so well when I got home. I was definitely a lot more open about my eating disorder. I had been really like guarded about it and didn't tell other family members outside of my immediate family. But this time I decided that I was going to be willing to share my story like I am right now. The support that I got from my extended family and my friends that might not have known really just blew me away. It definitely made me realize that I have a lot more to live for than my eating disorder. And I have a lot outside of food and exercise. So from this perspective where I am after my second time in treatment and being back at school, even, which was definitely a big challenge, don't minimize anyone's eating disorder, I guess. Comparing eating disorders gets really dangerous, and it's often said that like the best eating disorder, or like, I can't remember how they say, like the best anorexic is the one who died. They were doing it the best. So I don't think anyone's eating disorder should be taken lightly, and if you or someone you know is struggling with compulsive exercise like I was, or restricting, purging, really creating unhealthy eating habits and activities surrounding those eating behaviors, I don't know, the best thing that I could say is like, if you think it's a problem, then get help. And there's always places that you can go, counselors and therapists, and just look up resources online, because I was really surprised that after I was more open about my eating disorder, people were more open to talking to me about similar problems they might have had, and it's really more of a significant group of people than is realized. And the best thing that you can do is be honest with yourself and those around you that love you, and realize that there's such a risk of continuing those behaviors, and that there's far greater and more rewarding experiences than having a certain percent body fat, or running a certain amount every day, or being so competitive with yourself about like how many calories you're allowed to eat or you ate the previous day. And there's just so many different experiences that I realized have been opened up to me, and the quality of life after treatment, especially for me, and recognizing that I needed to get help, has drastically improved. And I would just encourage anyone out there that thinks they might need help to go get it, and just really reach out to someone. It doesn't really matter who it is. Just reach out, and someone's going to be there, and so many people care and are willing to support you along the way. It's not worth it to give everything up for so little. Thank you.